All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Coffee Q&A. We're back here, your daily dose of coffee Q&A here on the Ono Coffee channel every weekday morning, well, more or less, from 10 a.m. Eastern. So what's going on? How you all doing? It is July 9th. And what we're doing today is we're going to be talking about coffee. Well, the base thing here is coffee blending and roasting. So basically, one of the biggest things that you face as a coffee roaster or even in your own home roasting thing is consistency, right? You want to have consistency in your flavors because, for your own personal enjoyment, if you like a coffee, you like the way it tastes, you like the way it's roasted, you want to enjoy that for as long as possible. And if you're on the professional side and you're talking with guests, you want your guests to have a consistent experience. Like if they come in and say, "Hey, I'd like to have this coffee," and they get it one day, great. They come back again, good, great. Come back again, not the same. You know, you get these inconsistencies. And this is something that across the spectrum of industries, people are concerned about keeping consistent profiles and flavors so that the customers will be confident that their experience will be positive. Because most people, I remember, are not necessarily looking for the most ultimate experience. They're more concerned about mitigating risk. Even myself, I'd like to think of myself as very adventurous when it comes to food and trying new things. There's still that element of controlling the downside. Like, I'm willing to try all kinds of things, but I don't want to experience really, really bad, right? That's the whole, I think that's the basic human condition. Good morning, Mom. How are you, man? Good to see you. So today we were talking about these coffees. These are two coffees that were sent to me by one of my friends, Simon Ochen, who owns Chariots Coffee in Kampala, Uganda. And they're basically the same, right? This is the one that he sent to me in October, right? So this is the Sippy Specialty Blend. And Sippy meaning there's a place there called Sippy Falls, close to Mount Elgin, and it's a beautiful area with beautiful falls, and there's all this agricultural land around the falls area, and so this coffee comes from that area. Beautiful place. I've been there. I was last there in 2019, 2018, something like that. So he sent this to me in October, and then I got this from him last week. So these are supposed to be the same, right? This is also Sippy Specialty Blend, as you can see here. But now we're talking almost 10 months, is that right? 8, 9 months apart. How consistent is this coffee, right? Now, this is not meant to be a judge on Simon's team and their roasting and all that, but it's a question that as a coffee roaster myself, I concern myself with. It's like, can we maintain some kind of consistency between coffees? Now, I don't really know the whole story behind these two coffees, meaning that it says Sippy Specialty Blend, but it could very well just be a single origin. It all depends on how coffee is sourced and everything. And there's everything about it. So, for example, many years ago, 12 years ago or so, I thought I was finally getting a good grasp on understanding green coffee and how to buy it and how they separated lots and all this. I was like, all right, excellent. So I was actually on a trip to Uganda. I was visiting one of my good friends there. He owns a coffee exporting company. So he works with farmers. He sources coffee, works at the farm level, also has his own farms. And they are a company called Great Lakes Coffee in Kampala. And so they are, and so I'm there one day and he's like, "Hey man, would you like to cup some day lots with us?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "What do you mean day lots?" And I was like, because I understood like plots, right? Like, let's say this is your whole farm, right? And there's different plots of land. And now imagine that this is not just a flat piece of like land that you'd see like in the middle of the country, like in like Kansas or Iowa, but like, it's on mountainous terrain. So the actual elevation, the exposure to the sun is all can be very different from lot to lot. So I understood that each lot has its own like micro terroir that will affect the flavor of the coffee. But what I hadn't even thought about was that, the harvest season extends over a period of time, let's say 2 months. And let's say the peak of the harvest is, let's say, 3 weeks. They're picking from that one plot, let's say, each of those days, right? Because not all the fruit comes to ripeness, to full ripeness at one moment. So it's all on a stem of coffee cherries. You'll be the picker. Let's say that one tree, that one stem on that one tree, you'll pick a percentage off it one day, another percentage of another day, because we're only picking red and crimson cherries, right? So selective harvesting means that you have to revisit that tree, multiple times over the harvest season in order to get the best quality fruit off the tree. So in these lots, on these farms, they're visiting it daily or, fairly regularly. And so these are lot separations by day lot, or these are lot separations by day separations, right? And I was like, what? So we have one lot of coffee, one plot of coffee, and multiple days of separation. He's like, yeah, we're going to taste these ones and see the variations between the day harvest in this, and they're grouped by the lots, right? So each lot has their own multiple days of separation. You're like, what? And I was just so like just when I thought I understood what I was doing, I was like, oh, I got now I don't understand anymore. I'm a total, idiot for this. So what I mean by that is that we don't really know how these coffees were sourced, how they were separated and all that. So we have to make some assumptions. We're going to presume that these are relatively the same coffees, green-wise, but they may not be. We're going to presume that they're sourced from the same farms, but they may not be, right? And so one of the things about doing blending, roasting, or just roasting in general, or any kind of, this is true for beer production or wine production. Like you always see these like wine houses or champagne houses, for example, they talk about their house style. And if you ever watch visit videos about them or visit some of their facilities, you'll see that they will take grape juice in a very early stage of after fermentation, and their tasters are tasting these juices or these young wines, and they are now extrapolating, how do we create our house blend, our house flavor profile from these disparate wines and make it a consistent flavor, so that, for example, if you're buying Dom Perignon, right? If you're a big fan of that, which I'm not necessarily, there's a style to Dom Perignon. You want to have that every time you buy that $150 bottle or whatever it costs. You want that flavor because that's what you know, that's what you like, that's what you expect. Now, these guys have to create that flavor without having fully matured and fully aged wines. They have to extrapolate that out a year or so, which I think is really incredibly difficult and severely impressive. Like I just can't believe how amazing that these do. And even with things like beer, let's say something that's so mundane, such as Budweiser, right? People love to, craft people love to malign Budweiser, but Budweiser is an incredible operation because Budweiser has this flavor profile. Like it or hate it, whatever, it is what it is. The guys that are making Budweiser are working with crops that are changing every year. All their wheat, their hops, everything they're putting into it, their barley is always changing every year to year, depending on how the harvest went and how it's being stored and all that. Now they have to make Budweiser taste exactly the same, so that you can hate it as much as you did before. And I just think those are really fascinating, operations. So when it comes to this, I wanted to, when I got this and I still had some of this left, I was like, let's see how The coffee may be the same, may be different, maybe it may have changed. Now, of course, we're talking about a coffee that's 9 months old versus a coffee that's only a few weeks old. There's going to be differences there. So it's not about an apple. It's not necessarily apples to apples, but it's also not necessarily apples to lychee, right? But we are going to have to keep those factors in mind to see how much variation is there, if that makes sense. If you have questions, of course, drop them in the comments. So we're going to taste them. We're going to look at them. We're going to taste them, and brew them head to head. So first of all, and the point here, we're going to put. Well, let's start with this side. We're going to put over here the older stuff, the one from October. Now, the coloration of the roast profile will not have changed in the months that have passed. We will expect that there is some change as far as the flavor, right? But there should be a good semblance of the flavor still months on. All right, there we go. Let's zoom in a little bit more. So as we can see here, there is actually a noticeable difference between the beans. So these may all be from Sippy Falls, but perhaps they're not the same sourcing. There's a little bit of difference, right? You can see these are slightly larger than these, right? Is that necessarily a concern? No, not necessarily a concern, because at the end of the day, we're looking to provide a blend of coffees or to provide a coffee that meets flavor criteria that customers will be tasting. Customers are not necessarily, looking at the bean and being like, oh, well, there's a problem here. And most people will never get to the point of like, oh, I've got this bean from 10 months ago versus, 2 weeks ago. Let's compare. Like that. This is not what you would normally do, right? So as a roaster, you don't necessarily have to worry about this, but it is something to be concerned about because you want to have flavor consistency. All right, so let's have a look here again. Roast profile wise, look at the coloration, looks very, very similar. So there is good consistency there. And perhaps this is a good moment to, this is kind of where your real difference comes in from, with professionals. And this is not an uncommon thing. Like seeing roast profiles that are very similar, and we're talking now months apart, batches apart. They've got and for the same coffee or the same labeled coffee, we're having very similar roast profiles, and that's really testament to their professionalism and their craft and ability. So that's a real positive. I still have this whole summertime air conditioning sniffles. I think the monkey pod is getting a little bit in the way. All right, so let us set up. We're going to brew the coffees. All right, we got our scale here. We're going to measure off the first one, the most recent coffee, 24 grams. Okay, good. Now to make it as fair as we possibly can, I'm going to take some of this coffee and I'm just going to grind through it a little bit just to make sure that we are out of that when there's no residual coffees from before still floating around. I'm using this coffee, the coffee from this batch, to push it through. And we're going to do the same with the second coffee. All right, great. So now we're going to take this coffee. For this coffee, we're going to use the origami with the origami paper filter and this O2 brewer. Well, actually, this is the Temu version of the O2 brewer. So man, since we're going to be using the Hario V60, we'll pair that together. So I don't have two of any of these, so I'm just going to have to use one of each. But what we're going to do is we're going to use the same filter in both so that there's at least that level of consistency. So this is the origami O2 filter. Right? Very nice filter. Put that in there. Put that. Ooh, there are some nice coffee notes coming off of this. Nice, nice. Warm tone, just friendly, warm coffee tones. All right. Oh, here we go. Let's back again. Now we're going to measure out this from the sippy that's from October. I'm getting pretty good at this pouring thing. All right, then we're going to take the rest of this coffee and run that through. All right, now let's grind that up. All right, excellent, excellent. So now we've got that all set up. Let's get our other setup here. The Temu, this is like $4 at Temu. It's ridiculous. And actually, of all the stuff that I bought at Temu, this is actually really nicely made. Like, it's got a good thickness. Look at that. And it's been very solid. It's got to be one of the better pieces I bought from Temu. All right, so we need our origami filter. Here it is again, origami filter. We're going to put that in the V60. Now, I just out of habit, I always like to put the seam of the filter on this against the handle. Now, there's no real advantage to that. It's just a stylistic choice. It's a consistency thing. We train our baristas to do the same because we just want everyone to be very consistent and very much in tune with what they're doing. Here, shake that out, make it nice and flat. You can see here. Now, let's look at, okay, let me not switch sides. So like we said with the beans, the roast profile looked really good. Consistent. These two are very consistent. Perhaps here, because you want to look at the grind, you want to look at the ground coffee for roast color assessment. And I can see here, and I think it's also available on camera. This one looks slightly lighter than this one, like maybe just a few seconds difference before they dropped it out of the roaster. Is that a bad thing? No, but it's just something to note. Just to know, a lot of these things we're looking just to see. We want to make mental notes about the differences that we're seeing, so that as we taste, we can keep those in mind and see, oh, maybe that might have had an impact. Maybe this slightly deeper roasting will have an impact on the way that it tastes, in a positive or negative way. We don't know. We won't know until we taste. That's one thing that I try to remember when trying things, whether it's coffee or anything out there, is that we can look at visual cues that give us an idea of what it may taste like, but we don't really know until we actually taste it. So that's why I'm really a big proponent of taste. So like when I'm involved in like forums or discussions anywhere, It's always people are like, well, this and this and this and this, and say, yes, but how did it taste? Because taste is the ultimate arbiter. Like I always bear in mind, and I teach with our staff, it's like we have all these things, but ultimately, what's important to the guest is how does it taste? Did they enjoy the flavor? Did they enjoy the experience of drinking our product or consuming our products? That to me is the ultimate. Okay, maybe not the ultimate. It's one of the most important components of it. The ultimate expression is how they felt overall, of course. But really, what does it matter? What does it matter? All of this other stuff, who cares? All that matters is how it tastes, right? How much did you enjoy it? That's always been my thing. All right, let's look here. So we've got two scales. I'm going to put the scales head to head. Let me make sure my water is heating up again. So we've got this here. I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit. Okay, we got this here and this here. Let's do it like that. We're going to tear those out. I'm going to bring our trusty scale here. Looks like my butane canister is out. Guess we gotta buy more. Let me just reheat this back up here. Okay, we're back on track. Give just a couple more moments. If you have questions what we're doing, let me know. As you can see here, the two coffees are ready to go. Tear that. Okay, tear. We're ready to go here. We need our little timer. Perfect. Can you see that well? Let me just readjust here. All right, great. We are good to go with our water. Poured a good amount there. Now we're going to begin. We're going to start off with this one first with some pre-wetting, or not pre-wetting, but whatever you call this. I don't know. I'm going to bring it to the saturation point, but that's a little bit more. Oh, so that was a little bit too heavy a pour. 52 versus 38. Already we're getting off to a bad start. $64.90. All right, let me catch up with this one so that. Okay, there we go. More or less, they're at similar points. 45 seconds. So we want to do since we're doing 350 milliliter pours with 24 grams, we want to bring it to about 100 milliliters per minute. 120, 117, so more or less the same at 1 minute mark. Now you can see there is a little bit of difference in the way they're brewing, and I think that's mainly because of the size difference between the two brewers. Like this is an 04 dripper, this is an 02 dripper, but they're both 02 filters, 141 and 144. I definitely feel that there's a difference in the way that I have feel like I'm just feeling saturation, right? I'm meaning that I'm pouring it to a point where I think it's fully saturated or saturated enough, and I feel that they're different. The way that they're pouring is different. The way that I'm pouring into them is different. I'm pouring more. I tend to pour more conservatively with this one and more freely with this. As you can see, 176 and 182. So we have to catch up to this. See, like 197, 186. Now we're to 195. Most of the times, like at Spro, when we're brewing with multiple brewers like this, at a time, it's always with the same brewer. Like it's not meaning that we have multiples of each of the V60s, for example. 210, 211. We're at 2 minutes, 40 seconds. I'm also going to take a moment to refill the water because it is getting low. And I do like to keep a good amount of water volume in the kettle so that it holds some temperature. .301. We're going a little bit slow. I've been a little bit slow at this. 272. .330. So we are a little bit slow. We are a little bit slow. I think this is because the pouring that I'm doing is a bit on the slow side. 343. We are definitely going over time, over the 4 minutes. We're getting close. We're getting close to our end game here. 340, 336. I'm going to bring this one to full there. 350. 351.1. All right, there it is. 4 minutes, 6 seconds. We poured everything. Now let's see how long it will take for it to flow through. Now, in this particular case, we may have a little bit of over extraction. I'm not necessarily worried about it. I would prefer it to be, within the time parameters that we've set. So it's dripping. I'd say it's pretty much finished dripping now. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. So a little bit on the longer side, about 30 seconds maybe. Might have a little bit of over extraction. Really, I'm not necessarily concerned about that for today because we're brewing head to head and we're brewing the same. And they're timing out relatively the same with the same parameters, same amount of coffee, same amount of water. This should give us reasonably consistent results to compare, right? Reasonably comparable results. Right, that's it. Just toss that out. All right, there's our brews. Let me just get those out of the way. All right. We're going to need some cups. All right, let's pour it out. More, maybe a little bit more on this one. All right, that should be fairly close. So let's look. This is of course the one that's from October. This is from now. Oh, and we talked about this in the ground coffee, right? How there's a slight variance in the roast profile. You can see this one here, the October version, is quite lighter. It's noticeably lighter than this one, the one from 2 weeks ago. That's just interesting. So you can see the roast degree has an impact on the translucency of the coffee. That's really interesting to see up front. All right, let's try the October. Not bad. Not bad. I mean, it is a 10-month-old coffee or 9-month-old coffee. There's a little bit of puckeriness in the chin, the cheeks. All right, now for the newer version. There's a definite more pungent character to it. Interesting, because this puckering that's in here versus this, they kind of affect the same way. There's this pungency that affects the cheeks. This one is much more mellow than this one. This is a little bit sharper, a little bit more forward. Kind of like, if you, for those of you from Asia, like that durian kind of pungency, bitterness. Like, you can see that though this is the same character as this, but much more mellow because it's aged or it's older. But there is, the flavor profiles are very similar. Like, this is, everything in this cup is much more pronounced, much more forward. There's good medium round body. The structure is really nice. There is a bit of acidity, but I would not say it's definitely not a citrus acidity. There is an acidity. It's kind of a medium in acidity and intensity. That is there, but it's a little bit diminished. Huh. You can totally see that these are pretty much the same or very, very similar. Like, the consistency between the two is actually really, really great. Like, excellent. Like, you can, now is it perfect? No, because there is a little bit of the variance between the roast profile in this one and this one. We're also talking a separation of 9 months. So, and this kind of thing could just be a couple more seconds, right? So, especially if you're a manual roaster and you're looking at your trier, and a trier is this device that basically, like this kind of glorified spoon, for example, that goes into your roaster that catches coffee as it's in the falls inside the roasting chamber. And you're looking at it to inspect the coffee visually. So you can, a lot of times when you're roasting, you'll pull it out repeatedly because you want to see the progression, especially as you're getting close to the point where you're going to drop the coffee out of the roaster and stop the roasting process. So this could very well be, this variant could just be a matter of when they decided to drop the roast out of the roaster. But I think the consistency between them are very good. Like this is, it's not perfect, but it is excellent. Like, it's as good as you would like, as you can expect from any roaster anywhere in the world. That is, especially if they're doing manual roasting. Automated roasting, I'm not too sure about because I don't do automated roasting, but I mean, automated roasting theoretically can produce very, very consistent results without much effort. So, all right. So there it is. Just a little experience looking at the potential difference between roast profiling and consistency over a period of 9 months from Chariots Coffee. Thank you, Simon, for sending these coffees to me. I really appreciate that. We're trying to get Simon to come to the Roast Summit being held by Roast Magazine in October in Schaumburg, Illinois. Hopefully the U.S. government will give him a visa. So definitely, I would say these are pretty much the same coffee, or at least they got from the same source. This has got a lot more pungency, a lot more forward notes, a lot more like oomph, where this is a lot more mellow because it's older. All right, well, that's pretty much it for today. Hope that gave some insight. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. Love to see if I can answer them and give you intelligent results. But otherwise, that's pretty much it for today. We're back again tomorrow with the coffee Q&A. So hope to see you then. And if you have any suggestions about videos to come or whatever you'd like to know more about, let me know in the comments as well. All right. Until then, Mom, always good to see you, man. Have a good one.